It's time now for us to take a look at an issue which, for me, I think sometimes, you think you're taking 10 steps forward and then 100 steps backwards. And yesterday alone, we had 4 domestic violence related deaths. And here to shed some light and help us to understand the whole issue of domestic violence is the president of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Roberta Clarke. Good morning.
Good morning,
and
Lisa.
Welcome to the show. And yesterday when you were thinking it was the situation with the principal,
Yes.
now we're hearing later on in the day it continued. Are we making any progress at all? What are you guys seeing at the coalition?
It's hard to know if you're making any progress, and it's difficult to talk about that this morning. 4 people killed arising out of domestic violence. And I think it's important to call their names.
Yes.
So we have the principal of the preschool in Port of Spain, Giselle Philip Fornilla. And then we have 3 people, I think in the east, Pollyann Chuni Singh, she was only 31 years old, Damien, her brother, and her uncle Randy, all 4 killed out of domestic violence. Are we making progress? It's hard to tell.
Yes.
In the case of Pollyann, she had reported to the police because she had been attempted poison before, she had been beaten, her clothes had been burnt. She reported to the police. So I guess I want to ask the police directly, are you making progress in preventing preventable deaths?
And what happens when you report usually? You get a restraining order. What is the process for persons who, are going through domestic violence?
So Lisa, that's one of the things you asked me yesterday is what can people do when they're experiencing that?
Yes.
I think the first thing is that you have to know the signs.
Yes.
Know the signs of someone who's controlling you, who's isolating you, who's threatening you, who makes you feel intimidated.
Yes.
And then you have to tell someone that you trust.
Yeah.
Then it's very important to break the silence. And then, of course, you have remedies in law.
Yeah.
Going to the police is one of the things that you should do.
Right.
And then we can talk about what the police themselves should do.
Right.
Victims can also go to the magistrate's court in their district and apply for protection order.
Yes.
I mean, that can help. It's not a comprehensive protection, but it certainly puts you on the road to protection. And then everyone should have their safety plan. If you are in an abusive relationship, it will escalate. You have to have a safety plan. Who do you call? Do you have a safe place to go? Is your family around you and your community around you to protect you? So to prepare a safety plan if you're in that situation, some of the things, practical things.
So let's cycle back a little bit, because before you even get to the safety plan, you have to acknowledge that you're in a violent relationship, whether it is verbal, physical, emotional, and all the various forms of violence. But, sometimes persons don't get to that place for a number of reasons. How do you help persons move from being in a position where, for different reasons, whether it is that they think that it's their fault, or they're in love, or it's for the children, or for financial reasons. How do you move from that place to a safety plan?
So I think that what you've just said is really important. Knowing the signs and accepting the meaning of the signs. Don't romanticize the signs. You often hear women say, well, he doesn't like me to go to parties. Well, that's controlling. Or he don't want anybody whining on me in carnival season, let's say. That's controlling. You're your whole person, and you can make your own decisions, as can he. So I think the thing is not to romanticize isolation and control. Not to romanticize jealousy, not to romanticize possessiveness. Understand that
because
these
there
things,
is something wrong with that.
That's
we
right.
We have to come to that point of realization.
You're on a slippery slope.
Yes.
Once you allow someone to take control of your life like that. So to know those signs, when you feel threatened, when he's quarreling or she's quarreling, because of course people will say domestic violence goes across women and men, but of course the majority of the victims are women, for sure. But when the person you feel intimidated and fearful, they're cursing, they're obscene, they offend you, they insult you in front of your family and your friends, they insult you by yourself. These are all signs this is not a healthy relationship. This is not someone you should be with. And recognize that early, because you can't change that person, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's many times a mental block where a person who has been in an abusive relationship for quite some time and they stay in the relationship because of reason A, B, or C. How do you counsel or break through to that person? This situation you're in is not healthy, it's not safe, and it's something you need to see for yourself to get out of it. I mean, I'm sure with your organization there would be services where you counsel people. So how do you get that message across?
Yeah, so, people stay in abusive relationships for a complex range of reasons. Sometimes it's love, sometimes it's fear, it's anxiety, maybe it's financial dependence. It's just the judgment of the community that they fear, because we still have a culture where people will say, work it out. Staying in your marriage or staying in your union is important, work it out. So we get conflicting messages, and that may paralyze you. And you may stay because you have children, and you don't want to disrupt the family. But I think family members and friends have to be careful to listen carefully, be available to listen in a confidential way, and don't judge.
Yeah.
Really don't judge, but keep on providing alternatives to the person who's disclosing to you. Give them practical options without judging what they're doing, and be there, be really there for the person throughout the process, because it is difficult emotionally to disentangle.
Absolutely, and especially if you're in emotional abuse, right? Verbal abuse, it impacts on your consciousness, it impacts on your self-esteem, and that's another level of having to overcome to be able to move to, I like the term safety plan, because then even that self-esteem, self-elevation to make that step, that self-confidence, you have to work on that first.
You have to work on that. Victims often tell you that as they're being abused, the person who's abusing them is making them feel at fault.
Yes.
You are making me do this because you didn't do this, this, or you did that.
Yeah.
So really, to understand and to communicate that message always to the victim, you are not to blame. This is a problem that you have to get out of, but you did not create that problem. And it's important also to language. You hear people who are victims of abuse talk about, we had a fight. No, you did not have a fight. You were assaulted. Be clear about what is happening. It's not a two-way street here. You are being assaulted. Of course, people in unions will quarrel, will have disputes, verbal disputes, arguments. But that's not the same thing as being assaulted, right? So you're not fighting when you're being beaten. Someone is assaulting you, understand that.
So physically, you're assaulted. Verbally, if you're being called names or being insulted,
you're being assaulted.
So you can have a conversation without being called names.
Yes, you can. I mean, we're all in unions where we fight. Fighting and arguing and quarreling, not fight. Quarreling, this, difference of opinion, this is part of life. Whether with your partner, with your children, with your family, with your co-workers. But now, someone belittling you, putting you down, and physically assaulting you. This is another level. So we have to understand that it's an assault, it's an offense, and you have to be able to move out of it. But people need help moving out of that, and they don't need the judgment, because it is complicated. But please be there for someone in your life who you know is experiencing that.
But there's good news. The good news is that you can get through this. You can overcome. You can make that step. And I like to say baby steps, baby steps.
At least if I can interrupt you, I know our time is running out. It's also important that we don't personalize the solutions. Because many try to get out of their situation, but the system, the state apparatus is not supporting them.
How do you mean?
So, for example, in the case of Pollyann Chuni Singh, we understand now she had gone to the police. She had been beaten, her clothes had been burnt. Her punch of creme had been sort of spiked with something poisonous. She had gone to the police. So you can also have system failure.
Right.
Even when you have to leave, you need the support around you of the protective services. So once again, we have to ask the police, what are you doing enough?
Okay.
Are you taking women's reports seriously? And the other thing, women need somewhere safe to go. And just end of last year, the shelters came together in Trinidad and Tobago. First of all, Tobago has no shelter. So if you have to, can you imagine that? There's no safe place for women to go in Tobago, a safe shelter. And in Trinidad, a number of shelters had to close down or suspend services because of lack of funding.
Right.
So women need safe places to go, and we're saying the state has an obligation to support non-governmental organizations in making sure the shelters are up and running.
Okay.
So again, it's not just what the woman can do.
So we need to advocate as well.
Yes. You need the support, the protection, and the services.
Both ways.
You need both.
So as women and men, as you said, that level of recognition and helping them to recognize that they can break through, but also having the support systems in place. And we can have that conversation again.
Yes.
And because advocacy is what's important.
The police keep talking about detection, right?
Yeah.
We know detection of crime in Trinidad and Tobago is very low. But domestic violence is not about detection, because we always know who the person is who's been doing the threatening. So why can't the police act in a more decisive and effective way? And this is the challenge that I want to give to the police this morning. Can you tell us what are you doing to improve? I mean, a lot of police do very good work, so I don't want to make a general statement, but really and truly, we are relying on the police a lot to help us, you know, protect families in situations of danger, and they can do it.
Well, we can have that conversation with them, and we're going to have a continued conversation, because I think it's such an important, as I said at the opening, you know, sometimes you think you make 10 steps forward, and then you hear of incidences like this 4 in one day, and it's 100 steps backwards, particularly when it comes to domestic violence. I actually did a documentary on domestic violence so many years ago, you know, and I'm thinking
but there's
still
progress,
continues.
Coming to the police, because I don't really want to sort of be on top of the police this morning. They have actually very wonderful tools. They're standing orders that tell the police exactly what they're to do, and they're actually brilliant tools.
Right.
But are the police being trained continuously in how to use those tools? And is there accountability within the police system? So if there's a breakdown somewhere, there can be immediate corrective action. These are these things that we also need.
We're gonna get Commissioner Gary Griffin to help us answer some of those questions. Yeah, because I think it's very important. Roberta, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. I had such a notice as well.
Bad news to start the year on, but we can together we can change the scenario. We can.
Well, once we ventilate it, that's always good news to ventilate, because it means that it's taken one step forward to a solution. All right, so Roberta Clarke, they're president of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, our guest here in studio this morning.